Chapter 9. A Helping Hand. The three friends and Helen were about to cross the border. Drake, Haru, and Julia had lost their faith in the gods, but nothing could take away their courage. The final battle was about to begin. A lot of familiar faces had gathered that day. All the Olympians and every other god they met before. The dwarves were ready for a fight as well. Calypso and Eros too. Arian, Sapphira, and Hank had gathered as well. The only familiar face that was missing was Darren. Many creatures, dwarves, and elves decided to fight for Dragonia once more. On the other side, Mordor's followers were waiting. Behind them, an army of giant spiders, all kinds of giants and trolls, inferi, ravens, ash devils, and a few more miscellaneous creatures. No one attacked yet, and everyone was waiting. The defenders of Dragonia, or well, Rosium, were all scared. They kept looking at the army a few hundred meters in front of them. Mordor waited until everyone was there. He waited until Drake would join the battle. "You will collapse once you step over this border," Helen said. The border was a thin, shallow stream of water. "All right, here we go," Drake said. They took one step and had never before felt what they felt right then. They couldn't possibly keep standing on their legs, and they collapsed at the spot. The border hid those in Gordania, but once they revealed themselves, they were spotted. "How predictable," Mordor said. The dwarves came running towards them, followed by Calypso and Eros and Arian, Sapphira, and Hank. "Drake!" Chop shouted. "We prepared for this. We'll keep Mordor busy until you have your strength back." The god of sleep, Somno, ran towards them too. Drake, Haru, and Julia laid on the ground. Couldn't even manage to say a word. "I will rid you of your exhaustion. You will sleep for several minutes, and I will make sure that after that you're all well rested." "All so caring," Mordor said, who appeared out of a particle source of darkness. "It's a pity how they won't get to see my army tearing you all apart." Mordor moved his arms into the air and called upon his army. "Attack!" His monsters started yelling and attacked. He disappeared and joined his army. "I'll wait," he said before disappearing. Not just Somno came to help the heroes, because the other gods appeared before them. Sophia, Athena, fought off several monsters with her golden magical weapons. Pi fought on a horse, a creature no one in Dragonia knew without wings, and summoned waves of water to keep the monsters from coming close. Edoraid and Dionysus, covered each other's backs while defending the others. Malia, Artemis, had gathered the creatures from the forest of Dragonia, aiding the fight in their favor. Solion, Helios, used the brightness of the sun to burn and blind his enemies. Hephaestus was bending fire, and Ares used the wind. The gods helped defend what was dear, and they seemed to have the upper hand until hundreds of ravens appeared out of nowhere and were capable of hurting the gods. "Ouch! What is this?" Ares said, taken aback. "Keep in mind, Ares, we're no longer invulnerable. This might be it. This might be the end," Hephaestus said. "Then let it be the noblest end of the age of gods," Sophia said. It was the first time in the history of gods that they could become history. Drake, Haru, and Julia were in a deep sleep, despite all the noise. Everyone tried to protect them, but Mordor's army knew to surround them. A cave troll came running at them from behind the army. Calypso created a big shield of water from the stream behind them and used it to protect them from the bat the troll was swinging with. But when the shield splattered, she made whips from the water to try and stop the troll. Calypso managed to make it lose its balance and eventually knock it unconscious. The fight went on for several minutes until it was clear who seemed to have the upper hand. Mordor's army was getting depleted, or did it just look like that? He watched until he finally decided to do something. "Fine, I'll do it myself." Mordor came storming towards them, leaving death everywhere he went. He killed defenders and even his own as he stormed towards Drake. His dark magic managed to blow away a few of the gods and keep away Arian, Sapphira, and Hank as he was creating a path towards the middle. But he was a second late. When the last defense, Calypso, Eros, the dwarves, and Somno moved away, they revealed Drake, Haru, and Julia standing up with both feet on the ground, all rested and ready to fight a war. "No!" Mordor shouted. He had been too reliant on his army and was too late. Drake, Haru, and Julia still tried to get a grip on the moment, still a bit dizzy. Mordor signaled his army and it backed off. When Drake saw Mordor, he got a complete grip again on what was happening. Mordor and he looked at each other with a fierce look. When the army separated again, no one did anything. After all, they were unsure how to win the war if the greatest threat, Mordor, was left untouchable. But the war had to go on. Drake spoke. 3, 2, 1, go. And the fight started for real. The armies ran at each other and clashed loudly. Drake summoned a ball of fire, flickering and wavering above his hand. He wondered how he was able to control something as unusual like that so easily, but he did what he thought would work. Ralph! He threw the ball of fire at Mordor, who dodged it easily. Haru bent a powerful wind, aiming for Mordor. He stood still, simply using his mind to direct the wind a different way. Not even a hair moved. Kids, this way! Chop shouted. The three followed him to a tall blackened tree, which they hid behind. He's still invulnerable, right? Julia asked. Maybe, I don't know, Chop said. Perhaps the gods are able to kill him, or perhaps you are, Drake. He still seems to be obsessed with killing you, so who knows? But we won't rely on just you. This time, we're all in it together. As long as Mordor is keeping a watchful eye out, we won't be able to penetrate his defenses. Somehow we need to go through his army and all attack, and we might be able to pin him down that way. How I've missed you, Drake said with a smile. Good to see you too, kiddo, Chop said while smiling back. The fight went on. When they split up, Drake showed himself and took on Mordor. A while further on, the half-god and son of Haven, Hercules, was taking on a creature freed from the underworld by Mordor, Venime, the Scorpion Queen. She was dressed in purple ragged clothes and rode a giant mutated scorpion. Hercules, the half-god with super strength, lifted a giant boulder and threw it at Venime. She made the scorpion dodge the boulder, which it did with ease because of its several and swift legs. Venime was capable of using dark magic and threw balls of dark particles at Hercules. He was having trouble fighting the underworld queen until he was aided by the other half-gods and his brothers, Perseus, and Achilles. And their other brother, the god Aaron, Ares, decided to help his brothers. Wasn't she banned to the underworld? Percy asked. She was, so let's send her back, Aaron answered. The four gods, experienced in fighting, fought side by side to take on the underworld witch. They fought hard, but could barely get close. The scorpion was quicker than any of them, and the queen much more agile. Eventually, Aaron got sick and tired of how long it took. He held his eye in flail and recklessly ran straight towards Venime. She kept throwing dark magic at him, but he simply kept running, dodging the dark magic, holding his weapon at the ready. When he reached Venime, he jumped and landed an airstrike on the woman. He slam-dunked her with his flail, killing her, and smashing through the shell of the scorpion. And that's how you do it, Aaron said smugly while the others looked at him with an annoyed expression. I suppose sending our enemies back to the underworld is off the table then? Echo said. Meanwhile, at Haru and Julia. Haru and Julia were fighting side by side with the dwarves. Watch this, Haru, Julia said determinedly. I'm going to try something new. Julia tried out her powers for the first time. She was surprised when she managed to make something work right away. She pointed at a dying tree and pulled it out of the ground. With it, she smacked several enemies 30 meters away from them, if not obliterating them or the tree. Cool, Haru said. Meanwhile, at Arya, Saphira, and Hank. The three creatures fought against the Ash Devils and Ravens. They were in a big advantage, but Saphira was less trained to fight. She tried to knock the Ash Devils unconscious with her hooves and could deliver lethal blows. Hank bit every Raven into 2 pieces and Aryan could burn them to ash, which wasn't very clever because it created more Ash Devils, but those he could easily tear apart as well. Drake called for him. Aryan! Aryan descended and Drake mounted him. Mordor decided to call for backup. He had many monsters left to help turn the tides on the war. And this time, a dark, known figure appeared from behind the hills and headed for Mordor. This creature was called the Chernobog, and also referred to as the Black God. The monster was colored black and dark blue and capable of flying by using his massive wings. All combined, he looked like a demon, which in fact he basically was. He took Mordor on his back and went for Drake and Aryan. Despite the disadvantage Mordor's army had, the defenders were troubled with the fact that the army didn't seem to decrease. Compared to the war a few months ago, a few things had changed. Besides that most monsters were the same, and Drake had his friends fighting alongside him, this time it wasn't that everyone was relying on him. Yet Drake felt like he had to be the one to take on Mordor, and even though they had the gods on their side this time, he now knew Mordor had many more tricks up his sleeve and showed more strength than ever. Mordor's goal, nonetheless, was the same. He had to kill Drake. But Drake had much more on his side than Mordor had. Mordor's army was brainwashed, controlled. They knew nothing better. Drake, on the other hand, had friends on his side. Something even stronger than gods, friendship. Though Drake still wondered why Darren would want to miss out on a fight like that. What happened to him? Despite all the help Drake got, he was still unsure of how to deliver the final blow to Mordor. He knew he had to be fast because Mordor could summon an endless amount of minions and bring back his fallen monsters. Eventually, the army of Dragonia would fall. Drake had no idea what to do. Was the solution to keep Mordor distracted so someone else could catch him off guard? Did he have to take Mordor on from up close? He was still unsure of how strong Mordor was compared to him, but even if Drake was on his level, how could he repeat what he did all those months ago? Meanwhile at Haven, Helm and Pi. Mordor's army is far from strong enough, Pi said. Yeah, he'll have to show up with giants and titans if he still wants to win this war, Haven pointed out. The ground started shaking, and a few kilometers away from them, cracks started appearing in the ground. Out of the cracks, ravines formed, and a creature bigger than any creature came crawling out of it. It was kilometers away from them, but because of the monster's size, only seconds away. Thanks for that, Helm said to Haven. Don't worry, it's Gyges, Haven said. My friend. The 100-armed and 50-headed titan Gyges, a friend of Haven, came to aid the fight. The titan was about 150 meters high, being one of the largest monsters ever lived. As soon as the titan reached the battlefield, it started aiding the war, in Mordor's favor. No! Gyges stomped on many soldiers, killing a few of Mordor's in the process, though he deliberately aimed for Dragonia's warriors. Gyges, Mordor has you under his control! Mordor! Gyges blared, creating a deafening sound and making the ground vibrate, though every step he took shook the ground as well. With one of his many arms, he swung at Haven, who created a shield of light to protect himself. He pushed and jumped and closed in on Gyges' body. With the shield, he pushed the titan over. Gyges lost his balance and fell on his back. I'm sorry, Gyges. Haven summoned a bolt of lightning from the sky and aimed for the ground underneath Gyges. The earth cracked, a ravine was formed, and Gyges sank through the ground. Drake! The titan blared. Drake looked at what was happening. The monster was seemingly after him, and this made Drake extremely uneasy. Gyges sank and was swallowed by the earth. He was now trapped in the underworld until Haven could find out how to get his friend back. You alright, brother? Pi asked Haven. Yeah, I'm alright, he answered in a sad tone. Haven, this isn't ending, Helen pointed out. We have to give Drake time. We cover him, and perhaps he can figure out a way to defeat Mordor, Haven said. You're too reliant on the boy. He's just a kid. I rely on the prophecy. That would mean we die. The battle went on, and there was no end in sight. Dragonia's defenders still had the upper hand, but to everything eventually came an end. Arryn kept Drake on his back and was still trying to get away from Chernobog. Haru and Julia were using the opportunity to practice with their newfound powers. Darren still didn't make an appearance, while many wished he did. It doesn't matter how many you kill, my army never depletes, Mordor shouted. Every creature you kill, I will bring back to life. You're not bringing them to life, you're controlling the dead, Drake replied. Hold on, Arryn, I'll come up with something, Drake said in the dragon language. Take that dragon down, Mordor ordered Chernobog. Drake is mine. Chernobog surprised Arryn with a hidden attack. It started spitting a beam of blue fire. Arryn was forced to dodge and fly closer to the ground. Chernobog was still on Arryn's tail. When Arryn looked behind him and kept looking at Chernobog, he missed an obstacle Chernobog cleverly lured him into. Arryn! Drake yelled too late. Arryn crashed into a large dead tree. Drake had launched off, hit the ground and rolled many meters on. Arryn received a huge blow, snapping the tree right in half, leaving many splinters, branches and parts of wood flying through the air during the crash. Arryn, Drake tried to say as he got up. Arryn's right wing was hurt badly. He was left unable to fly. Arryn's body was pierced by parts of wood and splinters. Drake survived the crash with a large bleeding wound in his arm. Give up, Mordor said. As long as we are breathing, as long our hearts are pounding for each other, we will never give up. Drake grabbed his sword and Mordor his. They ran towards each other, and the moment their swords clashed, Drake lost his sight. Everything turned white. His sight came back, slowly, but he didn't see Mordor nor the battlefield. He was suddenly in the middle of a scene that looked familiar to him. It was the day they went to Scotland. He entered the bus with Haru. He walked to the end of the bus and asked something to Julia, but it was inaudible. All Drake could hear was a high-pitched noise. Suddenly, everything was fast-forwarded. Now, he was talking to Calypso, but he could not hear their conversation. And everything started fast-forwarding again. He was back at the time that they met the dwarves. Next up, his friends and he received their mounts, Arryn, Saphira and Hank. Once again the fast-forwarding happened. Eros joined them. And again, this time, he was in the dark forest where they met Darren. Next up, they were gathered at the palace, ready to fight the war for Dragonia. When it fast-forwarded again, they were meeting the gods in the Temple of Gordania. All these memories flashed by in seconds, but then something unusual happened. When everything was fast-forwarded again, he ended up in a memory that he didn't think was his. He didn't remember it. He saw a girl with red-brown hair and green eyes. She was fighting alongside Haru, Julia, and himself, but he didn't recognize her. Suddenly, he saw all his friends, plus the girl, fighting alongside each other. Friendship was a peculiar thing. The sound came back. The high-pitched noise died, and other sounds became louder, closer. "Drake," he heard a few times. "Drake! Drake!" When he opened his eyes, he saw Julia. "Drake, you're awake. Thank goodness. What happened?" Julia asked worriedly. "Wait, explain later. Can you stand?" Drake had trouble realizing what had happened. He knew he had no time and decided to let it slip, for now. He rose up and was moved after seeing every one of his friends protecting him. Drake was back and ready to help. "They defeated the Black God," Julia told Drake. "Chernobog? The gods worked together so well to take him down. You should have seen it." "Bummer," Drake said, a bit relieved. The ground underneath their feet started shaking. A gigantic mountain giant caused the quakes. A giant made entirely out of the stone and resources of the earth appeared before them. Everyone tried to stop it while it approached, but it was much stronger than anyone. Calypso tried but barely slowed it down. The gods used everything in their might to stop it, but it just kept going. The giant had almost made it to Drake and the others, and when it arrived, it raised its arm and tried to flatten him. At the very last moment, the giant was stopped by Hallam, who used up all his strength to defend Drake by blocking the giant with a shield of dark energy. "Go, now!" Hallam shouted. He managed to save Drake and pushed the giant back. All gods now worked together to stop it. Hephaestus wasn't able to do any damage, and Ares couldn't even move the giant. Pi, on the other hand, caused an earthquake and managed to trap the giant. After all, he was not just the god of the seas, but of earthquakes and horses as well, even though most people tended to forget about that. The giant sank through the ground, just like Gyges, and when the gods worked together to fill up the ground, the giant was trapped. When it couldn't move anymore, it rendered itself useless and stopped its havoc, becoming a monumental mountain in Uranian. "Ha!" Hallam shouted proudly. "They've forgotten who they're up against." Hallam couldn't say the words. "Hallam?" Haven said. But then Haven turned around and saw something horrifying. The brother he had known for thousands of years was giving a lethal blow. Brother! A mere follower of Mordor, not afraid to die, managed to pierce Hallam's chest with his sword. The woman who delivered the blow started laughing hysterically. Hallam tried to turn around and looked at her. She immediately dropped dead. Haven came running towards them, catching him as he fell to the ground. "Brother, no. I was hoping to die more heroically. As if you saved the kid. You saved us. You're a hero. And I think that makes you a true god." In the meantime, Drake got to them as well. Others started gathering one by one. Pi was shocked at the sight of his brother. "Oh no, brother, no," he said with tears descending down his face. Hallam started speaking to Drake. "Drake, I have to be honest." Hallam started to cough, making it hard for him to speak. "I never believed in the prophecy. I believed and still believe in you. I've put my faith in you, but not just you." He kept coughing. "Even you are nothing without your friends. Together you are the prophecy, and even if you fail, you do it together." "Oh, Hallam," Drake said saddened. "Drake, I look at you and I see." His final breath came close. "I see a boy with the heart of a dragon." Hallam closed his eyes. "Safe travels, brother," Haven said. "See you in a minute," Hallam said to him with his final breath. Haven chuckled. He had cried. "You're an ass." The god fell into a slumber for eternity. Hallam's body decomposed in smoke. After a few seconds, Hallam was gone. "You were wrong," Drake said. Haven looked at him. "When a god dies, there's nothing. The memories we have are real. The people he saved are alive thanks to him. Hallam was the hero Rosium needed, and his sacrifice gives hope. And even if we fail, our legacy will live. History will be written, and the defenders of Rosium will live on. A hero died today, but what makes him a hero is that it wasn't for nothing. We have something to work with now. We have something to set right. Let's end this war." "How touching," Mordor interrupted. They all turned around, facing Mordor. Haven's expression changed. He became furious and dropped his facade. Before Haven could attack, Drake called for Mordor's attention. "Ralph!" he shouted. "What did you call me?" Mordor replied. Drake pulled his sword and ran towards Mordor, yelling furiously. When their swords clashed again, everyone felt a certain change in the air. It was like the greatest opposites the world could imagine clashed, and how they fought for the greatest purposes. Drake and Mordor fought with great anger in their hearts and both for a powerful cause. "Ralph Warris, you've done terrible things. Stop this madness. I can kill a god. I am immortal. When will you see that this is futile? Whatever you are, whatever you can do, you will never know friendship or love, and that makes you weak. Darkness will consume you and it will break you. You will lose. Even if I die, even if we all die, eventually you will lose. It might not be by my hands, and frankly, I don't care. The dark will never win. When all turns to darkness, I will prevail. I will reign. I will win. I cannot die. And you are mortal." Drake took a few steps back. "I'm glad I am." Drake and Mordor ran towards each other one more time, but no one saw coming what happened next. To everyone's surprise, someone stepped in, pushing Drake aside. "McLean," Mordor said. "You know me?" Darren asked. "All too well." Mordor went in for the kill, but Darren revealed his weapon and held it in front of Mordor. Mordor's body started turning to stone when his eyes met those of Sir Pansus. Everyone could hear Mordor's final shout until he was left motionless. Right before his whole body turned, everyone could feel a cold wind that reached all the way past the outskirts of Rosium. No one knew what it meant. Mordor's final breath, perhaps, or something completely different. But the war was won. The leftover creatures and followers were taken care of, while some fled. At last, the world was saved. Maybe Helen was right. Maybe the prophecy was never a true prophecy, or perhaps it was never about Drake. Mordor's reign had ended. Darren was complimented and Drake was proud, not even slightly jealous, because like he said, he didn't care about whose hands Mordor would die. He was just happy that it was over. A god died that day, but they knew it was not for nothing. But they were wrong before.